The first time I saw him, he was hauling a toolbox up the creaky stairs of my Brooklyn loft, his flannel shirt clinging to his broad shoulders, sweat glistening on his brow. I stood frozen in the doorway, my paintbrush dripping cerulean onto the floor, wondering how someone could look so at ease in a space that wasn't his. By the end of that day, I'd learned his name was Caleb, and he'd turned my world upside down. My name is Ezra, a 24-year-old painter scraping by in a city that chews up dreamers like me. I'd rented this loft in Bushwick because it was cheap and had windows big enough to drown in light, perfect for my canvases. But the place was falling apart, leaky pipes, peeling plaster, a sofa that sagged like it had given up on life. My landlord, a gruff guy named Sal, sent Caleb to fix it all. Best handyman in the borough, Sal had said. I didn't expect the best handyman to be 25, with hazel eyes that caught the light like stained glass and a smile that felt like a secret. Caleb knocked that morning, his voice low and warm through the door. Ezra, got a work order for your place. I opened it, and there he was, 6 feet of quiet confidence, his toolbox rattling like a promise. He stepped inside, scanning the chaos of my loft, half-finished paintings stacked against the walls, jars of turpentine, and a coffee table I'd carved poetry into during late-night wine binges. Nice place, he said, and I laughed, thinking he was joking. But his eyes lingered on a canvasa swirl of blues and golds I'd been wrestling with for weeks. You made that? He asked, and I nodded, feeling oddly exposed. He got to work, hammering and wrenching, while I tried to focus on my painting. But every clang of his tools pulled my attention. He moved with purpose, his hands steady and sure, like he could fix anything: pipes, walls, maybe even me. I caught myself staring at the way his fingers wrapped around a wrench, calloused and strong, and felt a heat creep up my neck. I'd never been good at hiding my feelings, but I wasn't out to anyone except my best friend, Lena, who'd moved to Seattle last year. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd learned to keep my heart locked tight. Being gay wasn't something you shouted about where I came from. Need a hand? Caleb called out, catching me watching him. I stammered, no, I'm good, and turned back to my canvas, smearing paint in a way that ruined the whole piece. He chuckled, a sound that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. You sure? You look like you're fighting that painting more than painting it. I rolled my eyes but smiled. And that was the start of a tour, first real conversation. Standing in my crumbling loft, talking about art and broken pipes like it was the most natural thing in the world. By noon, he'd fixed the sink and was onto the walls, patching plaster with a focus that made me jealous. I offered him coffee, mostly to keep him talking. He accepted, sitting on my sagging sofa, his knee brushing mine as he took the mug. So, what's your deal, Ezra? He asked, his gaze steady. You paint. You live in this chaos. What's the story? I shrugged, deflecting with a joke about starving artists. But his eyes didn't let me off that easy. He saw through me, and it scared me how much I wanted him to keep looking. That day stretched into evening, and Caleb stayed longer than he needed to, tinkering with a loose floorboard while we talked about everything: music, movies, the way New York could make you feel alive and invisible at the same time. I told him about my parents, who still thought I was figuring things out in the city. And he told me about growing up in Atlanta, raised by his grandma after his mom left. She'd kill me if she knew I was flirting with a client, he said with a grin. And my heart stopped. Was he flirting? I couldn't tell. But the air between us felt charged, like a storm about to break. When he finally packed up his tools, the loft felt emptier. See you tomorrow, he said, and I nodded, trying not to look too eager. As the door closed, I sank onto the sofa, my fingers tracing the spot where his knee had brushed mine. I was in trouble, and I knew it. But I didn't know how deep it would go or how much it would cost me to let it. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Caleb's knock, my heart already racing before I even opened the door. I'd spent half the night replaying our conversation, dissecting every glance, every laugh. By the time he stepped inside, toolbox in hand, I was a mess of nerves and hope. He wore a faded black tee today, his arms flexing as he set down his tools. "Miss me?" he teased, and I laughed, hoping it hid the truth. We fell into an easy rhythm, him fixing, me painting, our banter filling the loft like music. But every time his hand brushed mine or our eyes met, the air grew heavier, like we were dancing around something neither of us could name. That afternoon, he found my carved coffee table. "Love found us here," he read aloud, tracing the words with his finger. "You write this." I nodded, my face burning. "It's just something I was feeling one night," I mumbled. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, and said, "It's beautiful." My chest tightened. No one had ever called my words beautiful before. By day 3, Caleb was more than a handyman. He was a presence, a gravitational pull I couldn't escape. We started sharing lunches, sitting cross-legged on the floor, trading stories about our lives. He told me about his first Crushaw boy in high school he'd never dared approach, and I admitted I'd never dated anyone, too scared to be honest with myself. "That's rough," he said softly, his hand resting close to mine. "But you're here now. You can be whoever you want." His words hit me like a tidal wave, stirring something I'd buried deep. That evening, he stayed late again, helping me move a heavy canvas to the other side of the loft. We ended up on the sofa, exhausted, our shoulders touching. The silence between us was thick, alive with possibility. "Ezra," he said, his voice low, "can I ask you something?" My pulse spiked. "Sure," I said, barely breathing. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "You ever feel like you're running out of time to figure things out?" I swallowed hard, knowing exactly what he meant. "All the time," I whispered. Then he leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "I'm gonna do something stupid," he murmured, and before I could respond, his lips brushed mine. It was soft, tentative, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. But I didn't. I kissed him back, my hands finding his shoulders, and the world fell away. The sofa creaked beneath us, the loft glowing with the last of the daylight. And for that moment, nothing else mattered. When we pulled apart, my heart was pounding, my mind a blur. "I can't believe I let that happen," I said, half laughing, half panicked. Caleb grinned, his thumb brushing my cheek. "Good thing I'm not done fixing things around here." But as he left that night, doubt crept in. What were we doing? I wasn't ready for this, not for the feelings, not for the risk. And yet, I couldn't stop wanting more. The days that followed were a haze of stolen glances and secret touches. Caleb came back every morning, his toolbox a pretext for spending hours with me. We'd work side by side, him patching walls, me splashing paint, our conversations weaving between playful and profound. But every kiss in the sofa, against the kitchen counter, behind a stack of canvases felt like a step closer to a cliff. I was falling for him, hard and fast, but fear kept me tethered. I'd never been open about who I was. Not really. My parents' voices echoed in my head, their disapproval from years ago when I'd hinted at my truth. "You're confused," my dad had said. "It's just a phase." I'd carried that shame across state lines. And now Caleb was unraveling it, piece by piece, with every look, every touch. One night, after he'd finished fixing a window, we sat on the sofa, a bottle of cheap wine between us. "What are we doing, Caleb?" I asked, my voice shaky. He set down his glass, his expression serious. "I like you, Ezra, a lot, but I know this is new for you." He paused, his hand finding mine. "I'm not going to push you, but I'm not going anywhere either." His words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. What if I wasn't brave enough for this? For him. The next day, things got complicated. My landlord, Sal, showed up unannounced. his eyes narrowing as he caught Caleb and me laughing too close together. "You two seem cozy," he said, his tone sharp. Caleb shrugged it off, but I saw the flicker of worry in his eyes. Later, he told me Sal had a reputation for being old school, not exactly open-minded. "He's my boss," Caleb said. "If he finds out about us, I could lose jobs." My stomach twisted. I hadn't even considered that Caleb was risking something too. That night, alone in my loft, I spiraled. What if this ended badly? What if I came out and the world turned against me? I thought about my parents, my friends back home, the life I'd built on half-truths. But then I thought about Caleb's laugh, his hands, the way he made me feel seen. I wanted to be brave for him, but bravery felt like a foreign language I didn't speak. The next morning, Caleb noticed my distance. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. I wanted to tell him everything he fears, my doubts, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I kissed him, hard and desperate, like I could drown my panic in him. He kissed me back, but when we pulled apart, his eyes were clouded. "Ezra, talk to me," he said. I shook my head, forcing a smile. "I'm fine." I lied, but I wasn't, and he knew it. The tension between us grew, a silent storm brewing in the loft. Caleb kept coming back, but our conversations felt heavier, our touches more cautious. I was caught between wanting him and fearing what it meant to want him. Every time we kissed, I felt like I was stealing something I didn't deserve. One afternoon, while Caleb was fixing a light fixture, my phone buzzed with a call from my mom. I stepped into the hallway, my heart sinking as her voice came through, bright and oblivious. "When are you coming home, Ezra? Your dad's been asking." I mumbled something vague, but her next words hit like a punch. "We just want you to be happy. You know, settle down with a nice girl." I froze, the weight of her expectations crushing me. When I hung up, Caleb was watching me, his expression soft but knowing. "Family stuff?" he asked. I nodded, unable to meet his eyes. That night, we sat on the sofa, the air thick with unspoken words. "Ezra," he said finally, "I can't keep doing this if you're not all in." His voice was steady, but there was pain behind it. "I know you're scared. I've been there. But I need to know you're with me." I wanted to say I was, that I'd choose him over everything, but fear clamped down on my heart. "I don't know how," I admitted, my voice breaking. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, and the hurt in his eyes was a knife to my chest. The next day, Sal showed up again, this time with a warning. "People are talking. Caleb," he said, glancing at me. "Keep it professional, or you're out." Caleb's jaw tightened, but he nodded. When Sal left, Caleb turned to me, his voice low. "I can handle him, but I need you to decide what you want." I wanted to scream that I wanted him, that I loved him, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I watched him pack his tools and leave, the door closing with a finality that broke me. For days, I didn't hear from him. The loft felt like a tomb, my paintings lifeless without his presence. I tried to call, but he didn't answer. I was losing him, and it was my fault. I'd let fear win, and now I was alone with the pieces of a life I didn't know how to fix. A week later, I couldn't take it anymore. I found Caleb's address through a mutual friend and showed up at his apartment in Bed-Stuy, my heart in my throat. He opened the door, looking tired but still beautiful, his eyes widening when he saw me. "Ezra," he said, and I didn't let him finish. "I'm sorry," I blurted. "I'm scared, and I'm a mess. But I love you. I don't want to lose you." The words spilled out, raw and true, and for the first time, I felt free. Caleb pulled me inside, and we talked for hours, laying everything bare, me fears, his hopes, the risks we'd both face. He told me about coming out to his grandma, how she'd hugged him and said, "You're my boy, no matter what." I told him about my parents, How I wasn't sure they'd ever understand. But I was done hiding. I want to be with you, I said, my voice steady now, even if it's hard. He smiled, pulling me close, and we kissed, not on my sagging sofa, but in his tiny apartment, surrounded by the life he'd built. We took it slow, building something real. I started telling people Lena first, then a few friends. Some were shocked, others unsurprised, but every step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Caleb kept working for Sal, but he stood his ground, refusing to let anyone dictate his life. When I finally told my parents, it was messy tears, arguments, silence, but I held on to Caleb's hand. And that was enough. Months later, we sat on my sofa again, the loft no longer crumbling, but alive with our shared dreams. I'd painted something Nawa canvas of blues and golds, inspired by him. He'd carved a new phrase into the coffee table. We found love here. It was simple, but it was ours. I looked at him, his hand in mine, and realized I'd let it go too far. Not the kiss, not the love, but the fear that almost kept us apart. Love wasn't the risk. Hiding was. And I was done hiding.